我是明聪，我现在我是阴山的明聪，我是11号，我现在要念Uncle Tom's what cabin. Okay, chapter 13. The Quaker settlement, a quiet scene now rises before us. A large, roomy, neatly painted kitchen. Its yellow floor glossy and smooth, and without a particle of dust. A neat, well-blacked cooking stove, rows of shining tin. The shining tin, suggestive of unmentionable good things to the appetite. Glossy green wood chairs, old and firm, a small flat bottomed rocking chair with a patchwork cushion in it, neatly contrived out of small pieces of different colored woolen goods, and a large-sized one, motherly and old, whose white arms breathed hospitable invitation, seconded by what? By an advertisement blocking my vision, my sight. Solicitation of its feather cushions, a real, comfortable, persuasive old chair, and worth it weight of honest, homely enjoyment. A dozen of your plush or blood-chattel drawing room gentry, and in the chair gently swaying back and forward. Her eyes is bent on some fine sewing, said our fine old friend Eliza. Yes, there she is, paler and thinner than in her Kentucky home, with a world of quiet sorrow lying under the shadow of her long eyelashes, and marking the outline of her gentle mouth. It was plain to see how old and firm the girlish heart was grown under the discipline of heavy sorrow, and when Annon, her large dark eye, was raised to follow the gambols of her little Harry, who was sporting like some tropical butterfly, hither and thither, over hither and thither, over the floor. She showed the depth of firmness and steady resolve that was never there in her earlier and happier days. By her side sat a woman with a brighten what? Brighten pennon. Her what? Stupid device. Brighten pen in her lap, into which she was carefully sorting some dried peaches. She might be 55 or 60, but hers was one of those faces that time seems to touch only to brighten and adorn. The snowy fusee crepe cap, made after the straight quarter pattern, the plain white muslin handkerchief, lying in placid folds across her bosom. The drab shawl and dress showed at once the community to which she belonged. Her face was round and rosy, with a healthful dawning softness suggestive of a ripe peach. Her hair, partially silvered by age, was parted smoothly back from a high, placid forehead, on which time had written no inscription except peace on earth, goodwill to man, and beneath shone a large pair of clear, honest, loving brown eyes. You only needed to look straight into them to feel that you saw to the bottom of a heart as good as true as ever throbbed in a woman's bosom. So much has been said, and son of beautiful young girls. Why don't somebody make up to the beauty of old women? Old women. If anyone to get up an inspiration under this head, we refer them to our good friend Rachel Halliday. Just as she sits there in her little rocking chair, it had to turn for quacking and squeaking. That chair had, either from having taken old in early life or from some asthmatic affection, or perhaps from nervous derangement. But as she gently swam backward and forward, the chair kept up a kind of soft, creaky, crouchy that would have been intolerable in any other chair. But old Simon Halliday often declared it was as good as any music to him, and the children of avowed that they wouldn't miss of hearing mother's chair for anything in the world. For why? For 20 years or more, nothing but loving words, and gentle moralities, and motherly loving kindness had come from that chair. Head edges and heart edges, innumerable, 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 had been cured there, cured there. Difficulties, spiritual and temporal, solved there, all by one good, loving woman. God bless her. And so thee still thinks of going to Canada, Eliza, she said, as she was quietly looking over her peaches. Yes, ma'am, said Eliza, firmly. I must go onward. I dare not stop. And what will thee do when thee gets there? Thee must think about that, my daughter. My daughter came naturally from the lips of Rachel Halliday, for hers was just the face and form that made mother seem the most natural world in the world. Natural world in the world. Then Eliza's hands trembled, and some tears fell on her fine work, but she answered firmly, I shall do anything I can find. I hope I can find something. Thee knows thee can stay there as long as thee pleases, said Rachel. Oh, thank you, said Eliza, but she pointed to Harry. I can't sleep nights. I can't rest. Last night I dreamed I saw that man coming into the yard, she said, shuddering. Poor child, said Rachel, wiping her eyes, but thee mustn't feel so. Feel so. The the Lord had ordered it so that never had a fugitive been stolen from our village. I trust thine will not be the first. The door here opened, and a little short round paned cushiony woman stood at the door with a cheery, blooming face like a ripe apple. She was dressed like Rachel, in sober gray, with the muslin folded neatly across her round, plump little chest. Ruth Sadman, said Rachel, coming joyful forward. How is thee, Ruth? She said, heartily taking both her hands. Nicely, said Ruth, taking off her little drab bonnet, and dusting it with her handkerchief, displaying as she did so a round little hat on which the Quaker cap sat with a sort of jaunty air, despite all the stroking and patting of the small fat hands, which were busily applied to arranging it. Certain stray locks of decidedly curly hair, too, had escaped here and there, and had to be coaxed and cajoled into their place again. And then the newcomer, who might have been 5 and 20, turned from the small looking glass, before which she had been making these arrangements, and looked well pleased, as most people who looked at her might have been, for she was deadly a wholesome, whole-hearted, cherubim little woman as ever gladdened man's heart withal. Ruth, this friend is Eliza Harris, and this is the little boy I told thee of. I am glad to see thee, Eliza, very, said Ruth, shaking hands as if Eliza were an old friend she had long been expecting. And this is thy dear boy. I brought the cake from him, he said, holding out the little heart to the boy, who came up, gazing through his curls, and accepted its shower. Where's that baby, Ruth? Said Rachel. Oh, he's coming, but Mary caught him as I came in, and ran off with him to the barn to show him to the children. At this moment, the door opened, and Mary, an honest, rosy-looking girl with large brown eyes like her mother's, came in with the baby. Aha! Said Rachel, coming up and taking the great white fat fellow in her arms. Now good he looks, how he does grow. Aha, said Rachel, coming up and taking the great white fat fellow in her arms. How good he looks, and how he does grow. How he does grow. How he does grow. To be sure he does, said the little bustling Ruth. Little bustling Ruth, as she took the child and began taking off a little blue silk hood and various layers and wrappers of other outer garments, and having given a twitch here and a pull there, and variously adjusted and arranged him, and kissed him heartily, she set him on the floor to collect his thoughts. Baby seemed quite used to this mode of proceeding, for he put his thumb in his mouth, as if it were quite a thing of course, and seemed soon stocking off mixed blue and white yarn, began to knit with briskness. To knit with briskness. Mary, the better feel the cattle. You better feel the cattle, hadn't thee? Gently suggested the mother. Mary took the cattle to the well, and soon reappearing, placed it over the stove, where it was soon pouring and steaming, a sort of censer of hospitality and good cheer. The peaches, moreover, in obedience to a few gentle whispers from Rachel, was soon deposited by the same hand in a stew pan over the fire. Rachel now took down the snowy margin board, and trying on an apron, proceeded quietly to make up some biscuits, first saying to Mary, hadn't thee better tell John to get the chicken ready? And Mary disappeared accordingly. And how is Abigail Peters? Said Rachel, as she went on with her biscuits. Oh, she's better. She's better, said Ruth. I was in this morning, made the bed, tidied up the tidied, tidied up, tidied up, tidied up the house. Lee Hills went in this afternoon, 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 and baked bread and pies enough to last some days, and I engaged to go back to her to get her up this evening. I will go in tomorrow and do any cleaning there may be. Maybe. I look over the mending, said Rachel. Ah, that is well, said Ruth. I've heard, she added, that Hannah Stanwood is sick. John was up there last night. I must go there tomorrow. John can come in here to his meals, if they need to stay all day, suggested Rachel. Thank thee, Rachel. We'll see. Tomorrow, but here comes Simon. Simon Halliday, a tall, straight, muscular man in drab coat and pantaloons, and broad-brimmed hat, now entered. How is thee, Ruth? He said warmly, as he spread his broad open hand for her little fat palm. And how is John? Oh, John is well, and all the rest of our folks, said Ruth cheerily. Any news, father? Said Rachel, as she was putting her biscuits into the oven. Peter Stebbins told me that they should be alone tonight with friends, said Simon significantly, as he was washing his hands at a neat sink in a little back porch. Indeed, said Rachel, looking thoughtfully and glancing at Eliza. Did thee say thy name was Harris? Said Simon to Eliza as he re-entered. Rachel glanced quickly at her husband, as Eliza tremulously answered yes, her fears ever uppermost, suggesting that possibly there might be advertisements out for her. Mother, said Simon, standing in the porch and calling Rachel out. What does thee want, father? Said Rachel, rubbing her flurry hands as she went into the porch. This child's husband is in the settlement, and will be here tonight, said Simon. Now thee doesn't say that, father, said Rachel, all her face radiant with joy. It's really true. It's really true. It's really true. Peter was down yesterday with the wagon to the other stand, and there he found an old woman and two men. And one said his name was George Harris, and from what he told of his history, I am certain who he is. He is a bright, likely fellow too. Shall we tell her now? Said Simon. Let's tell Ruth, said Rachel. Here, Ruth, come here. Ruth laid down her knitting work, and was in the back porch in a moment. Ruth, what does thee think? What does thee think? What does thee think? Said Rachel. Father says Eliza's husband is in the last company. What will be here tonight? A burst of joy from the little Quakeress Quakeress interrupted the speech. She gave such a bound from the floor as she clapped her little hands that two straight curls fell from under her Quaker cap and, and lay brightly on her white neckerchief. "Hush thee, dear," said Rachel gently. "Hush, Ruth. Hush, Ruth. Tell us. Shall we tell her now? Now, to be sure, this very minute. Why now? Suppose 'twas my John. How should I feel to tell her right off? Thee usest thyself on only to learn how to love thy neighbor, Ruth," said Simon, looking with a beaming face on Ruth. "To be sure, isn't it what we are made of? Isn't it what we are made for? If I didn't love John and the baby, I should not know how to feel for her. Come, now do tell her, do." And she laid her hands persuasively on Rachel's arm. "Take her into thy bedroom there, and let me fry the chicken while thee does it." Rachel came out into the kitchen, where Eliza was sewing, and opening the door of a small bedroom, said gently, "Come in here with me, my daughter. I have news to tell thee." The blood flashed in Eliza's pale face. She rose, trembling with nervous anxiety, and looked towards her boy. "No, no," said little Ruth, darting up and seizing her hands. "Never thee fear. It's good news. Eliza, go in, go in." And she gently pushed her to the door, which closed after her, and then, turning round, she caught little Harry in her arms and began kissing him. They'll see thy father. They'll see thy father, little one. Does they know it? Thy father is coming," she said over and over again, as the boy looked wonderingly at her. Meanwhile, within the door, another scene was going on. Rachel Halliday drew Eliza towards him, and said, "The Lord hath had mercy on thee. Daughter, thy husband hath escaped from the house of bondage." The blood flashed to Eliza's cheek in a sudden glow, and went back to her heart with a sudden Ruth. Ruth, she sat down, pale and faint. Have courage, child," said Rachel, laying her hands on her head. "He is among friends who will bring him here tonight." "Tonight," Eliza repeated. "Tonight." The words lost all meaning to her. Her head was dreamy and confused. All was mist for a moment. Then, when she awoke, she found herself snugly tucked up on the bed, with the blanket over her, and little Ruth wrapping her hands with camphor. She opened her eyes in a state of dreamy, delicious languor, such as one who has long been bearing a heavy load, and now feels it gone, and would rest. The tension of the nerves, which had never ceased a moment since the first hour of her flight, had given way, and a strange feeling of security and rest came over her. And as she lay, with her large, dark eyes open, she followed, as in a quiet dream, the motions of those about her. She saw the door open into the other room, saw the supper saw the supper table, with its snowy cloth, heard the dreamy murmur of the singing cattle, saw Ruth tripping backward and, and forward, with plates of cake and saucers of preserves, Endeavor and anon stopping to put a cake into Harry's hand, or pat his head, or twine his long curls around her snowy fingers. She saw the ample, motherly form of Rachel as she ever and anon came to the bedside, and smoothed and arranged something about the bedclothes, and gave a tug here and there, by the way expressing her her, her goodwill, and was conscious of a kind of sunshine beaming down upon her from her large, clear brown eyes. She saw Ruth's husband come in, saw her fly up to him, and commenced whispering very earnestly ever and anon, with impressive gesture pointing her little finger toward the room. She saw her with a baby in her arms sitting up to tea. She saw them all at table, and little Harry in a high chair under the shadow of Rachel's ample wing. There were low murmurs of talk, gentle thinking of teaspoons, and musical clatter of cups and saucers, and all mingled in a delightful dream of rest. Eliza slept as she had not slept before since the fearful midnight hour, when she had taken her child and fled through the frosty starlight. She dreamed of a beautiful country, a land, it seemed to her, of rest, green shores, pleasant islands, and beautifully glittering water. And there, in a house which kind voices told her was a home, she saw her boy playing free and happy child. She heard her husband's footsteps. She felt him coming nearer, nearer, nearer. His arms were around her, his tears falling on her face, and she awoke. It was no dream. The daylight had long faded. Her child lay calmly sleeping by her side. A candle was burning dimly on the sand, and her husband was sobbing by her pillow. The next morning was a cheerful one at the Quaker's house. Mother was up betimes, and surrounded by busy girls and boys, whom we had scarce time to introduce to our readers yesterday, and who all moved obediently to Rachel's gentle thee had better or more gentle, hadn't thee better, in the work of getting breakfast. For breakfast in the luxurious valleys of Indiana is a thing complicated and multiform, and like picking up the rose leaves and trimming the bushes in paradise, asking other hands than those of the original mother. While therefore, John ran to the spring for fresh water, and Simon the second sifted meal for corn cakes, and Mary ground coffee. Rachel moved gently and quietly about, making biscuits, cutting up chicken, and diffusing a sort of sunny radiance over the whole proceeding generally. If there was any danger of friction or collision from the ill-regulated zeal of so many young operators, her gentle come, or I wouldn't now, was quite sufficient to allay the difficulty. Bards have written of the sisters of Venus that turned the heads of all the world in successive generations. We had rather, for our part, have the status of Rachel Halliday, that kept heads from being turned and made everything go on harmoniously. Harmoniously, we think it is more suited to our modern days. Decidedly, decidedly. While all other preparations were going on, Simon the elder stood in his shirt sleeves before a little looking glass in the corner, engaged in the anti-patriarchal operation of shaving. Everything went on so sociably, so quietly, so harmoniously in the great kitchen. It seemed so pleasant to every one to do just what they were doing. There was such an atmosphere of mutual confidence and good fellowship everywhere. Even the knives and even the knives and folks, even the knives, even the knives and forks had a social clatter as they went on to the table, and the chicken and ham had a cheerful, had a cheerful and joyous fizzle in the pan, as if they rather enjoyed being cooked than otherwise. And when George and Liza and little Harry came out, they met such a hearty, rejoicing welcome. No wonder it seemed to them like a dream. At last, they were all seated at breakfast, while Mary stood at the stove, baking griddle cakes, which, as they gained the true exact, true exact golden brown tint of perfection, were transferred quite handily to the table. Rachel never looked so truly and beginningly happy as at the head of her table. There was so much motherliness, and full-heartedness, and full, and full, and full-heartedness, even in the way she passed a plate of cakes or poured a cup of coffee. That it seemed to put a spirit into the food and and drink she offered, and drink she offered. It was the first time that ever George had sat down on equal terms at any white man's table, and he sat down, at first, with some constraint and awkwardness, but they all exhaled and went off like fog, and the genial morning rays of his simple, overflowing kindness. This indeed was a home, a word that George had never yet known a meaning for, and a belief in God and trust in his providence began to encircle his heart as with a golden cloud of protection and confidence. Dark, misanthropic, atheistic doubts and fierce despair melted away before the light of a living gospel, breathed in living faces, preached by a thousand unconscious acts of love and goodwill, which, like the cup of cold water given in the name of a disciple, shall never lose their reward. Father, where if they should get found out again, said Simon second, as he buttered his cake. I should pay my fine, said Simon quietly. Quietly, quietly. But what if they put thee in prison? Couldn't thee and mother manage the farm? Said Simon, smiling. Mother can do almost everything, said the boy, But isn't it a shame to make such laws? Thee mustn't speak evil of thy rulers, Simon, said his father gravely. The Lord only gives us our worldly goods that we may do justice and mercy. If our rulers require the price of us for it, we must deliver it up. Deliver it up. Deliver it up. Well, I hate those old slave holders, said the boy, who felt as unchristian as became any modern reformer. I am surprised at thee, son, said Simon. Thy mother never taught thee so. I would do even the same for the slaveholder as for the slave, if the Lord brought him to my door in affliction. Simon II blushed scarlet, but his mother only smiled, and said, Simon is my good boy. He will grow older by and by, and then he will be like his father. I hope, my good sir, that you are not exposed to any difficulty on our account, said George anxiously. Fear not, George, for therefore are we sent into the world. If we would not meet trouble for a good cause, we were not worthy of our name. But for me, said George, I could not bear it. Fear not, then, friend George, it is not for thee, but for God and man. We do it, said Simon, and now thou must lie quietly this day, and tonight at 10 o'clock. Fanny's Fletcher will carry thee onward to the next stand, thee and the rest of the company. The pursuers are hard after thee. We must not delay. If that is the case, why wait till evening? Said George. Thou art safe here by daylight, for everyone in the settlement is a friend, and all are watching. It has been found safer to travel by night. Okay, so I think that was for the chapter 13. We'll continue on reading chapter 14. Okay, let's continue on chapter 14 of Uncle Tom's Cabin. Oh, come on. Okay, let's go. Evangeline, a young star, which shone o'er life too sweet an image for such glass, a lovely being, scarcely formed or molded, arose with all its sweetest leaves yet folded. The Mississippi, how, as by an enchanted wand, have its since been changed, since what is this word? Chatterup Branch wrote his poetic description of it, as a river of mighty, unbroken solitudes, rolling amid undreamed wonders of vegetable and animal existence. But as an hour, this river of dreams and wild romance has emerged to a reality of scarcely less visionary and splendid. What other river of the world bears on its bosom to the ocean the wealth and enterprise of such another country? A country whose products embrace all between the tropics and the poles. Those turbid waters, hurrying, foaming, tearing along, an apt resemblance of that headlong tide of business which is poured along its way by a race more vehement and energetic than any the old world ever saw. Ah, would that they did not also bear along a more fearful freight, the tears of the oppressed, the sighs of the helpless, the bitter prayers of poor, ignorant hearts to an unknown God, unknown, unseen, and silent. But who will yet come out of his place to save all the poor of the earth? So was that the hook? I don't know. The slanting light of the setting sun quivers on the sea-like expanse of the river. The shivery canes and the tall, dark cypress, hung with wreaths of dark, not funeral, funereal moss, glow in a golden ray as the heavily laden steamboat marches onward, piled with cotton belts from many a plantation up over deck and sides, till she seems in the distance a square, massive block of gray. She moves heavily onward to the nearing mart. We must look some time among its crowded decks before we shall find again our humble friend Tom, high on the upper deck, in a little nook among the everywhere predominant cotton bales. At last we may find him, partly from confidence inspired by Mr. Shelby's representations, and partly from the remarkably inoffensive and quiet character of the man. Tom had insensibly won his way far into the confidence even of such a man as Haley. At first, he had watched him narrowly through the day, and never allowed him to sleep at night unfettered. But the complaining impatience and apparent contentment of Tom's manner led him gradually to discontinue these re- restraint, and for some time Tom had enjoyed a sort of parole of honor, being permitted to come and go freely where he pleased on the boat, ever quiet and obliging, and more than ready to lend a hand in every emergency which occurred among the workmen below. He had won a good opinion of all the hands, and spent many hours in helping them with the hearty goodwill as ever he worked on a Kentucky farm. When there seemed to be nothing for him to do, he would climb to a nook among the cotton bales of the upper deck, and busy himself in studying over his Bible. And it is there we see him now, 400 or more miles above New Orleans. The river is higher than the surrounding country, and rolls its tremendous volume between massive levees 20 feet in height. The travelers from the deck of the steamer, as from some floating castle top, overlooks the whole country for miles and miles around. Tom, therefore, had spread out full before him, in plantation after plantation, a map of the life to which he was approaching. He saw the distant slaves at their toil. He saw afar their villages of huts, gleaming out in long rows, on many a plantation distant from the stately mansions and pleasure grounds of the master, and as the moving picture passed on, his poor, foolish heart would be turning backward to the Kentucky farm, with its old shadowy beeches, to the master's house, with its white, cool halls, and nearby the little cabin overgrown with the multiflora and bignonia. There he seemed to see familiar faces of comrades, comrades who had grown up with him from infancy. He saw his busy, busy wife bustling in her preparations for his evening meals. He heard the merry, la- merry, merry laugh of his boys at her play, and the chirrup, chirrup of the babe, chirrup of the babe at his at his knee, and then with a start, all faded, and he saw again the cane brakes and cypresses and gliding plantations, and heard again the creaking and groaning of the machinery, and telling him to plainly that all that phase of life had gone by forever. In such a case, you write to your wife and send messages to your children. But Tom could not write. The mail for him had no existence, and the gulf of separation was unbridged by even a friendly word or signal. It is strange, then, that some tears fall on the pages of his Bible as he lays it on the cotton bale, and with patient finger, threading his slow way from word to word, traces out its promises, having learned late in life, having learned in having learned late in life, having learned late in life, late in life, learned late in life, having learned late in life. Tom was but a slow reader, and passed on laboriously from verse to verse. Fortunate, fortunate for him was it that the book he was intent on, one which slow reading cannot endure, nah, one whose words, like ingots of gold, seem often need to be weighed separately, that the mind may take in their priceless value. Let us follow his a moment, as pointing to each word and pronouncing each half aloud, he reads, "Let not your heart be troubled. In my Father's house are many mansions. I go to a prepare a place for you." Cicero, Cicero, when he buried his dear, darling, and only daughter, had a heart as full of honest grief as poor Tom's. Perhaps for no fuller, for both were only men. But Cicero could pause over no such sublime words of hope, and look to no such future reunion. And if he had seen them, 10 to 1 he would not have believed. He must fill his head first with the thousand questions of authenticity of manuscript and correctness of translation. But to pour To poor Tom, there lay just what he needed, so evidently true and divine that the possibility of a question never entered his simple head. It must be true, for if not true, how could he live? Live? How could he live? As for Tom's Bible, though it had not annotations and helps in margin from learned commentators, still it had been embellished with certain waymarks and guideboards of Tom's own invention, and which helped him more than the most learned expositions could have done. It had been his custom to get the Bible read to him by his master's children, in particular by young Master George, and as they read, he would designate by, by bold, strong marks and dashes, with pen and ink, the passages which more particularly gratified his ear or affected his heart. His Bible was thus marked through, from one end to the other, with a variety of styles and designations, so he could in a moment seize upon his favorite passages without the labor of spelling out what lay between them. And while it lay there before him, every passage breathing of some old home scene, and recalling some past enjoyment, his Bible seemed to him all of his life that remained, as well as the promise of a future one. Among the passengers on the boat was a young gentleman of fortune and family, resident in New Orleans, who bore the name of St. Clair. He had with him a daughter between 5 and 6 years of age, together with a lady who seemed to claim relationship to both, and to have the little one especially under her charge. Tom had often caught glimpses of this little girl, for she was one of those busy, tripping creatures that can be no more contained in one place than a sunbeam or a summer breeze. Nor was she one that, once seen, could be easily forgotten. Her form was the perfection of childish beauty, beauty, without its unusual sharpness and squareness of outline. There was about it an undulating and aerial grace, such as one might dream of for some mythic and allegorical, allegorical being, allegorical being. Her face was remarkable, less for its perfect beauty of feature than for a singular and dreamy earnestness of expression, which made the ideal start when they looked at her, and by which the dullest and most literal were impressed, without exactly knowing why. The shape of her head and the turn of her neck and bust was peculiarly noble, and the long golden brown hair that floated like a cloud around it, the deep spiritual gravity of her violet blue eyes, shaded by heavy fringes of golden brown, all marked her out from violet blue eyes, shaded by heavy fringes of golden brown, all marked her out from other children, and made everyone turn and look after her as she glided hither and thither on the boat. Nevertheless, Nevertheless, the little one was not what you would have called either a grave child or a sad one. On the contrary, on the contrary, on the contrary, on the contrary, an airy and innocent playfulness seemed to flicker seemed to flicker like the shadow of summer leaves over her childish face and around her buoyant figure. Figure. She was always in motion, always with a half smile on her rosy mouth, flying hither and thither, flying hither and thither, with an undulating and cloud-like tread, tree tread, tree tread, singing, singing to herself as she moved, as in a happy dream. Her father and female guardian were incessantly, incessant, incessantly, incessantly busy in pursuit of her. But when caught, she melted from them again, like a summer cloud, and as no word of chiding or reproof ever fell on her ear for whatever she chose to, she pursued her own way all over the boat. Always dressed in white, she seemed to move like a shadow through all sorts of places without contracting spot or stain, and there was not a corner nor or nook above or below where those fairy footsteps had not glided, and that visionary golden head, with its deep blue eyes, flitted along. The fireman, as he looked up from his sweaty toil, sometimes found those eyes looking wonderingly into the raging depths of the furnace, and fearfully and pity, pity, pityingly at him, as if she thought him in some dreadful danger. Anon the streetsman at the wheel paused and smiled, and smiled, as the picture-like head gleamed through the window of the roundhouse, and in a moment was gone again. 1,000 times a day rough voices blessed her, and smiles of unwonted softness stole over hard faces as she passed, and when she tripped fearlessly over dangerous places, rough sooty hands were stretched involuntarily, terribly, involuntarily out to save her and smooth her path. Tom, Tom, who had the soft, impressible nature of his kindly race, ever yearning toward the simple, like childlike, watched the little creature with daily increasing interest. To him she seemed something almost divine, and whenever her golden head and keen blue eyes peered out upon him from behind some dusky cotton veil, or looked down upon him over some ridge of packages, he had believed that he saw one of the angels stepped out of his New Testament. Tesla. Often and often she walked mournfully round the place where hellish scan of men and women sat in their chains. She would glide in among them, and looked at them with an air of perplexed and sorrowful earnestness, and sometimes she would lift their chains with her slender hands, and then sigh woefully as she glided away. Several times she appeared suddenly among them, with her hands full of candy, nuts, and oranges, which she would distribute joyfully to them, and then be gone again. Tom watched the little lady a great deal, before he ventured on any overtures towards acquaintanceship. He knew an abundance of simple acts to pro- propitiate, 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 and invite the approaches of the little boy, of the little people, and he resolved to play his part tonight skillfully. He could cut cunning little baskets out of cherry stones, could make grotesque faces on hickory nuts, or odd jumping figures out of elder pitch, and he was a very pen in the manufacture of whistles of all sizes and sorts. His pockets were full of miscellaneous articles of attraction, which he had hoarded in days of old for his master's children, and when he now produced, with commendable prudence and economy, one by one, as overtures of our acquaintance and friendship. The little one was shy, for all her busy interest in everything going on, and it was not easy to tame her. For a while she would perch like a canary bird on some box or package near Tom, while busy in the little arts aforenamed, and take from him, with a kind of grave bashfulness, the little articles he offered. But at last they got on quite confidential terms. "What's little Miss's name?" said Tom at last, when he thought matters were ripe to push such an inquiry. "Evangeline St. Clair," said the little one, "though Papa and everybody else call me Eva. Now, what's your name?" "My name's Tom. The little Charles used to call me Uncle Tom, way back there in Kentucky. Kentucky. "Then I mean to call you Uncle Tom, because you see I like you," said Eva. "So, Uncle Tom, where are you going?" "I don't know, Miss Eva." "I don't know? You don't know?" said Eva. "No, I am going to be sold to somebody. I don't know who." My papa can buy you," said Eva quickly, "and if it buys you, you will have good times. I mean to ask him this very day." "Thank you, my little lady," said Tom. The boat here stopped at a small landing to take in wood, and Eva, hearing his father's voice, bounded nimbly away. Tom rose up and went forward to offer his service in wooding, and soon was busy among the hands. Eva and her father were standing together by the railings to see the boat start from the landing place. The wheel had made 2 or 3 revolutions in the water, when, by some sudden movement, the little one suddenly lost her balance and fell sheer over the side of the boat into the water. Her father, scarce knowing what he did, was plunging in after her, but was held back by some behind him, who saw that more efficient aid had followed his child. Tom was standing just under her on the lower deck. As she fell, she saw her strike the water and sink, and was after her in a moment, a broad-chested, strong-armed fellow. It was nothing for him to keep afloat in the water till, in a moment or two, the child rose to the surface. He caught her in his arms, and swimming with her to the boat's side, handed her up, all dripping, to the grasp of hundreds of hands, which, as if they had all belonged to one man, were stretched eagerly out to receive her. A few moments more, and her father bore her, dripping and senseless, to the lady's cabin, where, as is usually in cases of the kind, there ensued a very well-meaning and kind-hearted strife among the female occupants generally, generally, as to who should do the most things to make disturbance, and to hind her recovering in every way possible. It was sultry. Close day the next day, as the steamer drew near to New Orleans. A general bustle of expectation and preparation was spread through the boat and the cabin. One and another were gathering their things together and arranging them prepar- prepar- preparatory to going ashore. The steward and chambermaid and all were busily engaged in cleaning, furbishing, furbishing and arranging the splendid boat, preparatory to a grand entry. On the lower deck sat our friend Tom, with his arms folded, and anxiously, from time to time, turning his eyes towards a group on the other side of the boat. There stood the fair Evangeline, a little paler than the day before, but otherwise exhibiting no traces of the accident which had befallen her. A graceful, elegantly formed young man stood by her, carelessly leaning one elbow on the bale of cotton, while a large pocket book lay open before him. It was quite evident at a glance that the gentleman was Eva's father. There was the same noble cast of head, the same large blue eyes, the same golden brown hair, yet the expression was wholly different. In the large, clear blue eyes, though in form and color exactly similar, there was waiting that misty, dreamy depth, depth of expression. All was clear, bold, and bright, but with a light wholly of the world. The beautifully cut mouth had a proud and somewhat expression, sarcastic expression, while an air of free and easy sup, superiority, superiority superiority, superiority, sat not ungracefully in every turn and movement of his fine form. He was listening with a good humored, vigilant, vigilant air, half comic, half contemptuous, to Hallie, who was very volubly expatiating on the quality of the article for which they were bargaining. All the moral and Christian virtues bound in black morocco complete, he said, when Hallie had finished. Well, well, now, my good fellow, what's the damage, as they say in Kentucky? In short, what's to be paid out for this business? How much are you going to cheat me now? Out with it. Well, said Hallie, if I should say $1,300 from that our fellow, I shouldn't but just save myself. I shouldn't. Now, really. Poor, poor fellow, said the young man. Said the young man. Said the young man, fixing his keen, mocking blue eye on him. But I suppose you'd let me have him for that, out of a particular regard for me. Well, the young lady here seems to be sought on him, and innately enough. Oh, certainly, there's a call on your benevolence, my friend. Now, as a matter of Christian charity. Now, how cheap could you afford to let him go? To oblige a young lady that's particular sought on him? Well, now just think on it, said the trader. Just look at them limbs, broad-chested, strong as horse. Look at his head, them high forehead, Elisha, calculating niggers. They'll do any kind of thing. I've market that are now a nigger of that are heft and build is worth considerable. Just as you, just as you, just as you may say, for his body, supposing he's stupid, but come to put in his calculating faculties, and them which I can show he has uncommon. Why, of course, it makes him come higher. Why, that our fellow managed his master whole farm. He has extraordinary talent for business. Bad, bad, very bad. Knows altogether too much, said the young man, with the same mocking smile playing about his mouth. Never will do. In the world, your smart fellows are always running off, stealing horses and raising the devil generally. I think you'll have to take off a couple of hundred for his smartness. Well, there might be some in that air, if it weren't for his character, but I can sure recommend from his master and others, to prove he is one of your real pious, the most humble, praying, pious recruiter yet ever did see. Why, he's been called a preacher in them parts he came from, and I might use him for family chaplain, possibly, added the young man dryly. That's quite an idea. Religion is a remarkably scarce article at our house. You're joking. Now, how do you know I am? Didn't you just warrant him for a preacher? Has he been examined by any synod or council? Come, hand over your papers. And the trader had not been sure by a certain good-humored twinkle in the large eye that all this Badner was sure, in the long run, to turn out a cash concern. He might have been somewhat out of patience. As it was, he laid down a greasy pocket-book on the cotton bills, and began anxiously studying over certain papers in it. The young man standing by the while, looking down on him with an air of careless, easy drollery. Papa, do buy him. It's no matter what you pay, whispered Eva softly, getting up on the package and putting her arm around her father's neck. You have money enough, I know. I want him. What for, pussy? Are you going to use him for a rattlebox or a rocking horse or what? I want to make him happy. An original reason, certainly. Here the trader handed up the certificate, signed by Mr. Shelby, which the young man took with the tips of his long fingers and glanced over carelessly. A gentlemanly hand, he said, and well spelled too. Well, now, but I'm not sure, after all, about this religion, said he, an old wicked expression returning to his eye. The country is almost ruined with pious white people, such pious politicians as we have just before elections, such pious goings on in all departments of church and state. Been up in the market just now. I have not looked in the papers lately to see how it sells. How many $100 now do you put on for this religion? Like to be joking now, said the trader. But then there's sense under all that air. I know there's differences in religion, Some kinds is miserable. There's your meat and pious. There's your Sinan, rolling pious. Them aren't no account in black or white, but these rarely is, and I've seen it in niggers as often as nanny. Your real, softly, quiet, tight, steady, honest, pious, that the whole world couldn't tempt them to do nothing that they thinks is wrong. And yet see in this letter that what Tom's old master says about him. Now, said the young man, stooping gravely over his book of bills, if you can assure me that I really can buy this kind of pious, and that it will be set down to my account in the book up above as something belonging to me, I wouldn't care if I did go a little extra for it. How did you say? Well, really, I can't do that, said the trader. I'm a thinking that every man'll have to hand on his own hook in them are quarters. Rather hard on a fellow that pays extra on religion and can trade with it in the state where he wants it most. End it. Now, said the young man who had been making out a roll of bills while he was speaking. There, count your money, old boy, he added, as he handed the roll to the trader. All right, said Harry, his face beaming with delight, and pulling out an old inkhorn. He proceeded to fill out a bill of sale, which in a few moments he handed to the young man. I wonder now if I was divided up and inventoried, said the latter as he ran over the paper. How much I might bring, say, so much for the shape of my head, so much for a high forehead, so much for arms and hands and legs, and then so much for education, learning, talent, honesty, religion. Bless me. There would be small change on that last, I'm thinking. But come, Eva, he said, and taking the hand of his daughter, he stepped across the boat and carelessly putting the tip of his finger under Tom's chin, said good-humouredly, look up, Tom, and see how you like your new master. Tom looked up. It was not in nature to look into the gay young handsome face without a feeling of pleasure, and Tom felt the tears start in his eyes, and he said heartily, God bless you, master. Well, I hope he will. What's your name, Tom? Quite as likely to do it for your asking as mine. From all accounts, can you drive horses, Tom? I've been always used to horses, said Tom. Master Shelby raised heaps of them. Well, I think I should put you in Kachi, on condition that you won't be drunk more than once a week, unless in cases of emergency. Tom, Tom looked surprised and rather hurt, and said, I never drink, master. I've heard that story before, Tom, but then we'll see. It will be a special accommodation to all concerned. If you don't, never mind, my boy, he added, good-humouredly, seeing Tom still looked grave. I don't doubt you mean to do well. I certainly do, master, said Tom. And you shall have good times, said Eva. Papa is very good to everybody, only he always will laugh at them. Papa is much obliged to you for his recommendation, said St. Clair, laughing as he turned on his heels and walked away. And that's for chapter 14. Now I will continue on chapter 15. Alright, this is chapter 15 from Uncle Tom's Cabin. The start of Tom's new master and various other matters. Since the thread of our humble hero's life has now become interwoven with that of higher ones, it is necessary to give some brief introduction to them. Austin St. Clair was the son of a wealthy planter of Louisiana. The family had its origin in Canada, of two brothers very similar in temperament and character. One had settled on a flourishing farm in Vermont, and the other became an upland planter in Louisiana. The mother of Austin was a Huguenot French lady whose family had immigrated to Louisiana during the days of its early settlement. Austin and another brother were the only children of their parents, having inherited from his mother an exceeding delicacy of constitution. He was at the distance of physicians during many years of his boyhood, sent into the care of his uncle in Vermont, in order that his constitution might be strengthened by the cold of a more bracing climate. In childhood, he was remarkable for an extreme and marked sensitiveness of character, more akin to the softness of women than the ordinary hardness of his own sex. Time, however, overgrew this softness with the rough bark of manhood, but put few knew but few knew how living and fresh it still lay at the core. His talents were of the very first order, although his mind showed a preference always for the ideal and the aesthetic, and there was about him the repugnance to the actual business of life, which is the common result of this balance of the faculties. Soon after the completion of his college course, his whole nature was kindled into one intense and passionate afferent sense of romantic passion. His hour came, the, the hour that comes only once. His star rose in the horizon. That star that rises so often in vain, to be remembered only as a thing of dreams, and it rose from him in vain to drop the figure. He saw and won the love of a high-minded and beautiful woman in one of the northern states, and they were affianced. He returned south to make arrangements for their marriage, when most his letters would return to him by mail, with a short note from her guardian, stating to him that ere this reached him the lady would be the wife of another. Stunned to madness, he vainly hoped, as many another has done, to fling the whole thing from his heart by one desperate effort. Too proud to supplicate or seek explanation, he threw himself at once into a whirl of fashionable, fashionable society, and in a fortnight from the time of the fatal letter was the accepted lover of the reigning belle of the season, and as soon as arrangements could be made, it became the husband of a fine figure, a pair of bright dark eyes, and $100,000, and of course everybody thought him a happy fellow. The married couple were enjoying their honeymoon, and entertaining a brilliant circle of friends in their splendid villa near Lake Pontchartrain, when one day a letter was brought to him in that well-remembered writing. It was handed to him while he was in full tide of gay and successful conversation, in a whole room full of company. He turned deadly pale when he saw the writing, but still preserved his composure, and finished the playful warfare of bandage, which he was at the moment carrying on with the lady opposite, and a short time after was missed from the circle. In his room alone he opened and read the letter. Now horse that idle and uses to be read, it was from her, giving a long account of a persecution to which she had been exposed by her guardian's family, to later to unite herself with their son, and she related now how, for a long time, his letters had ceased to arrive, how she had written time again, till she became weary and doubtful, how her health had failed under her anxieties, and how, at last, she had discovered the whole fraud which had been practiced on them both. The letter ended with expressions of hope and thankfulness, and professions of undying affection, which were more bitter than death to the unhappy young man. He wrote to her immediately. I have received yours, but too late. I believed all I heard. I was desperate. I'm married, and all is over. Only forget. It is all that remains for either of us. And thus ended the whole romance and ideal of life for Augustin St. Clair. But the real remained. The real, like the flat, bare, oozy type mud, when the blue sparkling wave, with all its company of gliding boats and white-winged ships, its music of oars and churning waters, has gone down, and there it lies, flat, slim, bare, exceedingly real. Of course, in the novel people's hearts break, and they die, and that is the end of it. And in the story this is very convenient, but in real life we do not die when all that makes life bright dies to us. There is a most basic and important round of eating, drinking, dressing, walking and visiting, buying, selling, talking, reading, and all that makes up what is commonly called living, yet to be gone through, and this yet remained to Augustin. Had his wife been a whole woman, she might yet have done something, as women do, as woman can, to mend the broken threads of life, and weave again into a tissue of brightness. But Marion St. Clair could not even see that they had been broken. As before stated, she consisted of a fine figure, a pair of splendid eyes, and $100,000, and none of these items were precisely the ones to minister to a mind diseased. When Augustin, pale as death, was found lying on the sofa, and police sudden sick headache as the cause of his stress, she recommended to him to smell of hartshorn, and when the paleness and headache came on week after week, she only said that she never thought Mr. St. Clair was sickly, but it seems he was very liable to sick headaches, and that it was a very unfortunate thing for her, because he didn't enjoy going into company with her, and it seemed odd to go so much alone when they were just married. Augustin was glad in his heart that he had married so undiscerning a woman, but as the closest and civilities of the honeymoon wore away, he discovered that the beautiful young woman who has lived all her life to be caressed, and waited on, might prove quite a hard mistress in domestic life. Mary never had possessed much capability of affection or much sensibility, and the little that she had has been merged into a most intense and unconscious selfishness, a selfishness the more hopeless from its quiet obtuseness, its utter ignorance of any claims but her own. From her infancy, she had been surrounded with servants who lived only to study her caprices. The idea that they had either feeling or rights had never dawned upon her. Even in distant perspective, her father, whose only child she had been, had never denied her anything that lay within the compass of human possibility. And when she entered life, beautiful, accomplished, and an heiress, she had, of course, all the eligibles and non-eligibles of the other sex shining at her feet, and she had no doubt that Augustine was the most fortunate man in having obtained her. It is a great mistake to suppose that a woman with no heart will be an easy creditor in the exchange of affection. There is not on earth a more merciless exactor of love from others than thoroughly selfish woman, and the more unlovely she grows, the more jealously and scrupulously she exacts love to the uttermost farthing. When therefore St. Clair began to drop off those gallantries and small attentions which flowed at first through the habitude of courtship, he found his sultana no way ready to resign her slave. There were abundance of tears, palatines, and small tempests. There were discontents, pines, bradens. St. Clair was good-natured and self-indulgent, and sought to bite off with presents and flatteries. And when Marian became mother to a beautiful daughter, he really felt awakened for a time to some like tenderness. St. Clair's mother had been a woman of uncommon elevation and purity of character, and he gave to his child his mother's name, fondly fancying that she would prove a reproduction of her image. The thing had been remarked with petulant jealousy by his wife, and she regarded her husband's absorbing devotion to the child with suspicion and dislike. All that was given to her seemed to so much taken from herself. From the time of the birth of this child, her health gradually sunk. A life of constant inaction, both bodily and mentally, the friction of ceaseless ennui and discontent, united to the ordinary weakness which attended the period of maternity, in course of a few years, changed the blooming young belle into a yellow, faded, sickly woman, whose time was divided among a variety of fanciful diseases, and who considered herself in every sense the most ill-used and suffering person in existence. There was no end of her various complaints, but her principal fault appeared to lie in sick headache, which sometimes would confine her to her room 3 days out of 6, as, of course, all family arrangements fell into the hands of servants. St. Clair found his manage anything but comfortable. His only daughter was exceedingly dedicated. He feared that with no one to look after her and attend to her, her health and life might yet fall a sacrifice to her mother's inefficiency. He had taken her with him on a tour to Vermont, and had persuaded his cousin, Miss Ophelia St. Clair, to return with him to his southern residence, and they are now returning on this boat, where he have introduced them to our readers. And now, while the distant domes and spires of New Orleans lies to our view, there is yet time for an introduction to Miss Ophelia. Whoever has traveled in the New England states will remember, in some cool village, the large farmhouse, with its clean-swept grass yard, shaded by the dense and massive foliage of a sugar maple, and remember the air of order and stillness, of perpetuity and unchanging repose, that seemed to breathe over the whole place, not lost, or out of order, not a picket loose in the fence, not a particle of litter in the turfy yard, with its clumps of lilac bushes growing up under the windows. Within he will remember wide, clean rooms where nothing ever seems to be doing or going to be done, where everything is once and forever rigidly in place, and where all household arrangements move with the punctual exactness of the old clock in the corner in the family keeping room, as it is termed. He will remember the staid, respectable look old bookcase with its glass doors, where Roland's history, the ancient history, 10 volumes, 1730 to 1738, by the French historian Charles Roland, 1661 to 1741, Milton's Paradise Lost, Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, and Scott's Family Bible, 1788 to 1792, edited with notes by the English biblical commentator Thomas Scott, 1747 to 1821, stands side by side in decorous order with the multitudes of other books equally solemn and respectable. There are no servants in the house but the lady in the snowy cap, with the spectacles, who sits sewing every afternoon among her daughters, as if nothing ever had been done, or were to be done. She and her girls, in some long forgotten fore party of the day, did up the work, and for the rest of the time, probably at all hours when you would see them, it is done up. The old kitchen floor never seems stained or spotted. The tables, the chairs, and the various cooking utensils never seem deranged or disordered. Through three and sometimes 4 meals a day are got there. Through the family washing, and the ironing is there performed, and though pounds of butter and cheese are in some silent and mysterious manner there brought into existence. On such a farm, in such a house and family, Miss Ophelia had spent a quiet existence of some 45 years. And when her cousin invited her to visit his southern mansion, the eldest of a large family, she was still considered by her father and mother as one of the children, and the proposal that she would she should go to Orleans was the most momentous one to the family circle. The old gray-headed father took down Morge's atlas, the Serographic Atlas of United States, out of the bookcase, and looked out the exact latitude and longitude, and read Flint's travels in the South and West, Recollections of the Last 10 Years, 1826, by Timothy Flint, 1780 to 1840. Missionary of Presbyterianism to the Trans-Allegheny West, to make up his own mind as to the nature of the country. The good matter inquired anxiously if Orleans wasn't an awful wicked place, saying that it seemed to her most equal to go into the Sandwich Islands, or anywhere among the heathen. It was known at the minister's that and that at the doctor's and at Mrs. in shop that of last street St. Clair was talking about going round cousin, and of course the whole village could do no less than help this very important process of taking about the matter. The minister, who in abolition abolitionist views, was quite doubtful whether such a step might not tend somewhat to encourage the Southerners in holding on to their slaves, while the doctor, who was a stanch colonizationist, inclined to the opinion that Miss Offley ought to go, to show the Orleans people that we don't think hardly of them. After all, he was of opinion. In fact, the southern people needed encouraging. When, however, the fact that she had resolved to go was fully before the public mind, she was solemnly invited out to tea by all her friends and neighbors for the space of a fortnight, and her prospects and plans duly canvassed and inquired into. Miss Mosley, who came into the house to help to do the dressmaking, acquired daily accessions of importance from the development with regard to Miss Ophelia's wardrobe, which she had been able to make. It was credibly ascertained that Squire Sinclair, as his name was commonly constructed in the neighborhood, had counted out $50 and given them to Miss Offley, and told her to buy any clothes she thought best, and that 2 new silk dresses and a bonnet had been sent from Boston. As to the propriety of this extraordinary outlay, the public mind was divided, some affirming that it was well enough, all things considered, for once in one's life, and others stoutly affirming that the money had better have been sent to the missionaries. But all parties agreed that there had been no such parcel seen in those parts as had been sent on from New York, and that she had one silk dress that might fairly be trusted to stand alone. Whatever might be said of its mistress, there were credible rumors also of a hemstitched pocket handkerchief, and report even went so far as to state that Miss Offley had one pocket handkerchief with lace all around it, It was even added that it was worked in the corners, but this latter point was never satisfactorily ascertained, and remains, in fact, unsettled to this day. Miss Ovler, as you now behold her, stands before you in a new shine brown linen traveling dress, tall, square-formed, and angular. Her face was thin and rather sharp in its outlines, the lips compressed, like those of a person who is in the habit of making up her mind definitely on all subjects, while the keen, dark eyes had a peculiarly searching, advised movement, and traveled over everything, as if they were looking for some to take care of. All her movements were sharp, decided, and energetic, and though she was never much of a talker, her words were remarkably direct and to the purpose when she did speak. In her habit, she was a living impersonation of order, method, and exactness in punctuality. She was as inevitable as a clock, and as inexorable as a railroad engine, as she held in most decided contempt and abomination anything of a contrary character. The great sin of sins in her eyes, then the sum of all evils, was expressed by one very common and important word in her vocabulary: shiftlessness. Shiftlessness, her final and ultimatum of contempt, consisted in a very emphatic pronunciation of the word shiftless, and by this she characterized all modes of procedure which had not a direct and inevitable relation to accomplishment of some purpose, then definitely had in mind people who did nothing, or who did not know exactly what they were going to do, or who did not take the most direct way to accomplish what they set their hands to, were objects of entire contempt. A contempt shown less frequently by anything she said than by a kind of stony grimness, as if she scorned to say anything about the matter. As to mental cultivation, she had a clear, strong, active mind, was well and thoroughly read in history, and the older English classes now stood great strength within certain narrow limits. Her theological tenets were all made up, labeled in most positive and distinct forms, and put by, like the bottles in her patch trunk. There were just so many of them, and there were never to be any more. So also were her ideas with regard to most matters of practical life, such as housekeeping in all its branches, and the various political relations of her native village, and underlying all, deeper than anything else, higher and broader, lay the strongest principle of her being, consciousness. Nowhere is conscience so dominant and all absorbing as with New England women. It is the granite formation which lies all absorbing as with New England women, it is the deepest and rise out even to the tops of the highest mountains. Miss Offler was the absolute bound slave of the Alps. Once make her certain that the path of duty, as the commonly phrase it, lay in any given direction, and fire and water could not keep her from it. She would walk straight down into a well or up to a loaded cannon's mouth, if she were only quite sure that there the path lay. Her standard of right was so high, so all embracing, so minute and making so few concessions to human frail, frail, frailty, that that though she strove with heroic ardor to reach it, she never actually did so, and of course was burdened with a constant and often harassing sense of deficiency. This gave this gave a severe and somewhat gloomy cast to her religious character. But how in the world can Miss Offler get along with Oxon St. Clair, gay, easy, unpunctual, unpractical, skeptical, in short, walking with impudent and nonchalant freedom over every one of her most cherished habits and opinions? To tell the truth, that Miss Ophelia loved him. When a boy, it had been hers to teach him his catechism, mend his clothes, comb his hair, and bring him up generally in the way he should go, and her heart having a warm side to it. Oxen had, as he usually did with most people, monopolized a large share of it for himself, and therefore it was that he succeeded every very easily in persuading her what that the path of duty lay in the direction of New Orleans, and that she must go with him to take care of Eva, and keep everything from going to wreck and ruin during the frequent illness of his wife. The idea of a house without anybody to take care of it went to her heart. Then she loved the lovely little girl as few could help doing, and though she regarded Oxton as very much of a heathen, yet she loved him, laughed at his jokes, and forbore with his feelings to an extent which those who knew him thought perfectly incredible. But what more or other is to be known of Miss Offler, our reader must discover by a personal acquaintance. There she is, sitting now in her stateroom, surrounded by a mixed multitude of little and big carpet bags, boxes, baskets, each contains some separate responsibility which she is trying, binding up, packing, or fastening with a face of great earnestness. Now, Eva, have you kept count of your things? Of course you haven't. Children never do. There's the spotted carpet bag and a little blue handbox with your best bonnet. There's two. Then the India rubber statue is three. And my tape and needle box is four, and my handbox five, and my color box and a little hair trunk seven. What have you done with your sunshade? Give it to me, and let me put a paper round it, and tie it to my umbrella with my shade. There, now. Why, Auntie? We are only going up home. What is the use? To keep it nice, child. People must take care of their things. They never mean to have anything. And now, Eva, is your thimble put up? Really, Auntie, I don't know. Well, never mind. I'll look your box over. Thimble, wax two spools, scissors, knife, tape, needle. All right, put it in here. What did you ever do, child, when you were coming on with only your papa? I should have thought you'd lost everything you had. Well, auntie, I did lost a great many, but then when we stopped anywhere, papa would buy some more of whatever it was. It was mercy on us, child. What a way! It was a very easy way, auntie, said Eva. It is a dreadful shiftless one, said auntie. Why, auntie, what will do you do now? Said Eva. The trunk is too full to be shut down. It must shut down, said auntie, with the air of a general, as she squeezed the things in and sprung upon the lid. Still a little gap remained about the mouth of the trunk. Get up here, Eva, said Miss Ophelia courageously. What has been done can be done again. This trunk has got to be shut and locked. There are no two ways about it. And the trunk, intimidated doubtless by the resolute statement, gave in. The hasp snapped sharply in its hole, and Miss Ophelia turned the key, pocketed it in triumph. Now we're ready. Where's your papa? I think it's time this baggage was set up. So look out, Eva. Do look out, Eva, and see if you see your papa. Oh yes, he's down the other end of the gentleman's cabin, eating an orange. Can't know how near we are coming, said auntie. Hadn't you better run and speak to him? Papa never is in a hurry about anything, said Eva, and we haven't come to the landing. Do step on the guards. And to look, there's our house, up that street. The boat now began, with heavy groans like some vast tired monster, to prepare to push up among the multiplied steamers at the levee. Eva joyously pointed out the various spires, domes, and waymarks by which she recognized her native city. Yes, yes, dear, very fine, said Miss Ophelia, but mercy on us. The boat has stopped. Where is your father? And now ensued the usual turmoil of landing. Waiters running 20 ways at once, men tugging trunks, carpet bags, boxes, women anxiously calling to their children, and everybody crowding in a dense mass to the plank towards the landing. Miss Ophelia seated herself resolutely on the lately vanquished trunk, and marshalling all her goods and chattels in fine military order, seemed resolved to defend them to the last. Shall I take your trunk, ma'am? Shall I take your baggage? Let me tend to your baggage, Mrs. Shan't I carry these yet, Mrs.? Rain down upon her unheeded, she said with grim determination, up, upright as a daring needle stuck in a board, holding on her bundle of umbrella and parcels, and replying with a determination that was enough to strike dismay even into a hackman, wondering to Eva in each interval. What upon earth her papa could be thinking of? They couldn't have fallen over now, but something must have happened, and just as she had begun to work herself into a real distress, he came up with his usually careless motion, and given Eva a quarter of the orange he was eating, said, "Well, Cousin Vernon, I suppose you are all ready." "I've been ready, waiting nearly an hour," said Miss Ophelia. "I began to be really concerned about you." "That's a clever fellow. Now," said he, "while the carriage is waiting, and the crowd are now off, so that one can walk out in a decent and Christian manner and not be bent. I'll go and see to his putting them in, said Miss Ophelia. So, so, cousin, what's the use? Said St. Clair. Well, at any rate, I'll carry this, and this, and this, said Miss Ophelia, singling out the 3 boxes and a small carpet bag. My dear Miss Vermont, positively you mustn't come the Green Mountains over us that way. You must adopt at least a piece of Southern principle, and not walk out under all the load. They'll take for a waiting maid. Give them to this fellow. He'll put them down as if they were eggs now. Miss Ophelia looked despairingly as her cousin took all her treasures from her, and rejoiced to find herself once more in the carriage with them, in a state of preservation. Where's Tom? Said Eva. Oh, he's on the outside, Pussy. I'm going to take Tom up to mother for a peace offering, to make up for that drunken fellow that upset the carriage. Oh, Tom will make a splendid driver, I know, said Eva. He'll never get drunk. The carriage stopped in front of an ancient mansion built in that odd mixture of Spanish and French style, of which there are specimens in some parts of New Orleans. It was built in the Moorish fashion, a square building enclosing a courtyard into which the carriage drove through an arched gateway. The court in the inside had evidently been arranged to gratify the picturesque and voluptuous ideality. Wide galleries ran all around the four sides, whose Moorish arches, slender pillars, and arabesque ornaments carried the mind back, as in a dream, to the reign of Oriental romance in Spain. In the middle of the court, a fountain threw high its silvery water, falling in a never ceasing spring to a marble basin, fringed with a deep border of fragrant violets. The water in the fountains, pale set as crystal, was alive with a myriad of gold and silver fishes twinkling and darting through it like so many living jewels. Around the fountain ran a walk paved with a mosaic of pebbles laid in various fanciful patterns, and this again was surrounded by turf, smooth as green velvet, while a carriage drive enclosed the whole. 2 large orange trees, now fragrant with blossoms, threw a delicious shade, and ranged in a circle round upon the turf were marble vases of arabesque sculpture containing the choicest flowering plants of the tropics. Huge pomegranate trees with their glossy leaves and flame-colored flowers, dark-leaved Arabian jasmines with their silvery stars, and luxuriant roses bending beneath their heavy bundles of flowers, golden jasmines, lemon-scented verbena, all united their bloom and fragrance, while here and there a mystic old aloe with its strange massive leaves looked like some old enchanter, sitting in weird grandeur among the more perishable bloom and fragrance around it. The galleries that surrounded the court were festooned with a curtain of some kind of Moorish stuff, and could be drawn down at pleasure to exclude the beams of the sun. On the whole, the appearance of the place was luxurious and romantic. As the carriage drove in, Eva seemed like a bird ready to burst from a cage with the wild eagerness of her delight. Oh, isn't it beautiful, lovely, my own darling home, she said to Miss Ophelia. Isn't it beautiful? Tea is a pretty place, said Miss Ophelia as she alighted, though it looks rather old and heathenish to me. Tom got down from the carriage and looked about within. Off came still enjoyment the negro. It must be remembered it is an exotic of the most gorgeous and superb countries of the world, and he has deep in his heart a passion for all that is splendid, rich, and fanciful, a passion which, rudely indulged by an untrained taste, draws on them the radical of the colder and more correct with race. St. Clair, who was in heart a poetical, vol, vol, voluptuary, smiled as Miss Offler made her remark on his premises, and turned to Tom, who was standing looking around, his beaming black face perfectly radiant with admiration. He said, "Tom, my boy, this seems to suit you." "Yes, mister, it looks about the right thing," said Tom. All this passed in a moment while trunks were being hustled off, hackmen paid, and while the crowd of all ages and sizes, men, women, and children, came running through the galleries both above and below to see Master come in. Foremost among them was a highly dressed young mulatto man, evidently a very distinct personage, attired in the ultra extreme of the mud, and gracefully waving a St. Cambric handkerchief in his hand. This personage had been exerting himself with great alacrity in driving all the flock of domestics to the other end of the veranda. "Back, all of you! I am ashamed of you," he said, in a tone of authority. "Would you intrude on master's domestic relations in the first hours of his return?" All looked abashed at this elegant speech, delivered with quite an air, and stood huddled together at a respectful distance, except two stout porters, who came up and began conveying away the baggage. Owing to Mr. Adolph's systematic arrangement, when St. Clair turned around from paying the hackman, there was nobody in view but Mr. Adolph himself, conspicuous in satin vest, gold guard chain, and white pants, bowing with inexpressible grace and suavity. "Oh, Adolph, is it you?" said his master, offering his hand to him. "How are you, boy?" While Adolph poured forth, with great fluency, an extemporary speech which he had been preparing with great care for a fortnight before. Well, said St. Clair, passing on with his usual air of nonchalant drollery, "that is very well got up, Adolph. See that the baggage is well bestowed. I'll come to the people in a minute." And so saying, he led Miss Offler to a large parlor that opened on the veranda. Where this had been passing, Eva had flown like a bird through the porch in the parlor to a little bowdler opening likewise on the veranda. A tall, dark-eyed, swollen woman half rose from the couch on which she was reclining. "Mamma," said Eva in a sort of rapture, throwing herself on her neck and embracing her over and over again. "That'll do. Take care, child. Don't you make my head ache." "Don't my head ache," said the mother. After he had loudly kissed her, St. Clair came in, embraced his wife in true orthodox husbandly fashion, and then presented to her his cousin. Mary lifted her large eyes on her cousin with an air of some curiosity, and received her with a larger politeness. A crowd of servants now pressed to the entry door, and among them a middle-aged mulatto woman of very respectable appearance stood foremost in a tremor of expectation and joy at the door. "Oh, there's Mommy," said Eva as she flew across the room and throwing herself into the arms she kissed her repeatedly. This woman did not tell her that she made her head ache, but on the contrary, she hugged her, and laughed and cried till her sanity was a thing to be dubbed off, and when released from her, Eva flew from one to another, shaking hands and kissing, in a way that Miss Alfler afterwards declared fairly turned her stomach. "Well," said Miss Alfler, "you Southern children can do something that couldn't." "What now, pray?" said Sandra. "Well, I want to be kind to everybody, and I wouldn't have anything hurt but as to kissing." "Nigger," said St. Clair, "that you're not up to, hey?" "Yes, that's it. How can she?" St. Clair laughed, and she went into the passage. "Hello, here, what's to pay out here? Here you old Mommy, Jimmy, Polly, Saki, glad to see Master," he said, as he went shaking hands from one to another. "Look out for the babies, babies," he added, as he stumbled over a sooty little urchin who was crawling upon all fours. "If I stoop upon anybody, let 'em mention it." There was an abundance of laughing and blessing Master as St. Clair distributed small pieces of charge among them. "Come now, take yourselves off, like good boys and girls," he said, and the whole assemblage, dark and light, disappeared through a door into a large vestibule, followed by Eva, who carried a large satchel which she had been filling with apples, nuts, candy, ribbons, laces, and toys of every description during her whole homeward journey. As St. Clair turned to go back, his eye fell upon Tom, who was standing uneasily, shifting from one foot to the other, while Dove stood leisurely leaning against a banister, examining Tom through an opera glass with an air that would have done credit to any dandy living. "Pooh, you puppy," said his master, tracking down the opera glass. "Is that the way you treat your company? Seem to me, Dove," he added, laying his finger on the elegant figure, saying, "Best I was sported, seems to me that's my best." "Oh, master, this vessel all standing with wine. Of course, a gentleman in master's standing never wears a vest like this. I understood I was to take it. It does for a poor nigger fellow like me." And Dove tossed his head and passed his fingers through his scented hair with a grace. "So that's it, is it?" And said Claire, "Well, here I'm going to show this Tom to his mistress, and then you take him to the kitchen. And mind you don't put on any of your airs to him. He's worth two puppies as you." "Master always will have his joke," said Adolphe, laughing. "I'm delighted to see Master in such spirits." "Here, Tom," said St. Clair, knocking. Tom entered the room. He looked wistfully on the velvet carpet and before unimagined splendors of mirrors, pictures, statues, and the curtains like the Queen of Sheba before Solomon. There was no more spirit in him. He looked afraid even to set his feet down. "See here, Mary," said St. Clair to his wife, "I brought you a coachman at last. To all that I tell you, he's has a earth for blackness and sobriety, and will drive you like a funeral. If you won't open your eyes now and look at him. Now don't say I never think about you when I'm gone." Mary opened her eyes and fixed them onto Tom without rising. "I know he'll get drunk," she said. "No, he warranted a pious and sober article." "Well, I hope he may turn out well," said the lady. "It's more than I expect, though." Dove," said St. Clair, "show Tom downstairs, and mind yourself," he added. "Remember what I told you." Dove tripped gracefully forward, and Tom, with lumbering tread, went after. "He's a perfect behemoth," said Mary. "Come on now," Mary said himself on suicide herself. I'll be gracious and be something pretty to a fellow. You've been gone a fortnight beyond the time, said the lady, pouting. Well, you know I wrote you the reason. Such a short, cold letter, said the lady. Dear me, the mail was just going, and it had to be that or nothing. That's just the way always, said the lady. Always something to make your journeys long and letters short. See here, now, he added, drawing an elegant velvet case out of his pocket and opening it. Here's a present I got for you in New York. It was a daguerreotype, clear and soft as an engraving, presenting Eva and her father sitting hand in hand. Mary looked at it with a dissatisfied air. What made you sit in such awkward position? She said. Well, the position my well, the position my well, 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 the position may be a matter of opinion, but what do you think of the likeness? If you don't think anything of my opinion in one case, I suppose you wouldn't in another, said the lady, shutting a doggerel type. Hand the woman, said St. Clair mentally, but aloud he added, Come now, Mary, what do you think of the likeness? Don't be nonsensical. Now, it's very inconsiderate if you, St. Clair, said the lady, to insist on my talking and looking at things. You know, I've been lying all days with a sick headache, and there's been such a tumult made ever since you came. I'm half deaf. I'm half dead. You're subject to the sick headache, ma'am, said Miss Offler, suddenly rising from the depths of the large armchair, where she had sat quietly, taking an inventory of the furniture and calculating its expense. Yes, I'm a perfect matcher to it, said the lady. German better tea is good for sick headache, said Miss Offler. At least Abraham Perry's wife used to say so, and she was a great nurse. I'll have the first Jupiter berries that get ripe in our garden by the lake through it for that special purpose, said St. Clair gravely, pulling the bells as he did so. Meanwhile, cousin, you must be wanting to retire to your apartment and refresh yourself a little after your journey off, he added. Tell Mommy to come here, and the sentimental woman whom Eva has caressed so rapturously soon entered. She was dressed neatly, with a high red and yellow turban on her head, and a recent gift of Eva in which the child had been arranged on her head. Mommy, said St. Clair, I put this lady under your care. She is tired and she wants to rest. Take her to her chamber and be sure she is made comfortable. And Miss Offler disappeared in the rear of Mammy. I just finished chapter 15, and this takes me 59 minutes.